Welcome back to Reddit Discover channel.
My grandmother's entire life she had a recurring nightmare. In this nightmare, she would be walking down a long dark hallway, turn to the left, open a door, and see something terrible. She'd always wake up before seeing what it was. In her 40s, she, her husband, my dad, and my aunt were on vacation. They booked the hotel at the last minute, so they ended up having to get 2 rooms with 2 twin beds on opposite sides of the floor. My dad wakes up around 3 a.m. and can automatically tell something's not right. He calls out in the darkness, "Dad." No response. He turns on the bedside light. "Dad," he says, a little louder this time. Still no response. Getting worried, he slides out of bed and shakes his father. He doesn't wake up. My dad ran down the hotel hallway to my grandma's room and started banging on the door. My grandma worriedly opens the door and my dad shouts something's wrong with Dad. He leads her down the hallway. A long hallway, to the last door on the left. My grandmother reaches the door, turns to left, and sees her husband dead in bed. Heart attack. She never had the dream again. Too many chills. I feel like a big raw turkey. This one is my favorite. I almost threw up from being so creeped out by this.
I live near a camp that I used to attend as a child. When I was 7, there was a counselor at the camp who was Russian. The camp has a very large staff exchange program with many different countries, and very weird at that. Counselors said he was incredibly fast, and during staff-only campfires he would catch, skin, and eat live rabbits. He could do this crazy, sleeper hold move. It essentially was a strangling move that knocked you out for a few seconds, you came to, and were fine a minute later. I saw him do it on a counselor once. The guy was out for about 10 seconds. He was forbidden to do it after that. However, kids got curious and started asking him to do the move. He would do it in secret, but he would increase the severity of his holds, which would in turn keep the kid knocked out for a longer period of time. One day, a camper went missing. He wasn't in his bunk, despite going to bed with his cabin that night. They did a camp-wide search, keeping us all on the soccer field for about 2 hours. The counselors had to start searching the water. They found his body under the sailing dock, completely out cold. He was alive, but very unconscious. He had the strangle marks around his neck. Everyone knew who it was. They arrested the Russian guy, and deported him back to Russia. Turns out they never even sent an exchange counselor. Nobody knew who the fuck he was. And he grew up to be the president of Russia. The end. Putin trolling the silly American campers. Jesus Christ. My 4-year-old daughter was supposedly asleep when I heard noise coming from her upstairs bedroom. I tried to listen but could not make out what was being said. I approached the room, and she stopped talking. Thinking I alarmed her, I went into the room. At the time she was sharing it with her 3-year-old sister. I walked in and saw the 4-year-old sitting up in bed. I smiled and said, "Is everything okay?" She said fine, but her sister said they were keeping her up. I asked who. My 4-year-old said sorry but that she was talking. When I asked her who she was talking to, my 3-year-old sat up and said, "The girl in the window. She said you were coming." After I shit a brick, I asked who the girl was and they both said a girl comes and stands in front of the window at night and talks to them. Not knowing what to say, I said okay, tucked them in and hung around outside their door. The next day I asked about the girl. They said she came back but was mad. I waited a few days and asked again. My 4-year-old said the girl in the window was still mad. I forgot about it for about a week, when my wife said, "Who are the girls talking to upstairs?" Freaked out, I ran upstairs and both girls were sitting under the window looking up. They turned and looked at me and asked if I wanted to meet the girl. When they turned around, disappointed, they said the girl left. It has been about 5 years since and I have not heard about the girl in the window since then. My bed is right next to a window. You son of a bitch. But I'm 3 stories up, that bitch can try. I'd almost prefer a ghost over a crazy teenager that talks to little children through their bedroom windows at night. This was the first one to truly send a chill down my spine. It's so interesting that neither of them were afraid of her. Did they ever draw her at all? A friend of mine told me when she was 13, she and her friend were at the mall and an older guy, 40 plus, started chatting them up and offered to buy them clothes. The girls went along and he bought them each about $100 worth of stuff. Then he wanted them to go back to his place to show him the clothes and the girls ditched him. Hate to think what his plans were to recoup his investment. Clever girls. Get the candy. Run away. I guess this is why my mom didn't let me go to the mall without her until I was 15 to 16 years old. At 13 I would know what that meant. I ain't sayin' they be gold diggers. One of my friends had a job in the hospital looking after patients, making beds etc. I heard he randomly quit his job, wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I bring some beers over to his house and try to see if I can get him talking. He's a total emotional wreck. Finally get him to talk and he says that he was working one night in the hospital when he heard a nurse shouting for help because someone was going into cardiac arrest. So he runs down a hallway and some man runs towards him, they almost bump into each other and the man shouts, "Where's the exit?" My friend points to the exit, then runs into the room with the man going into cardiac arrest, only to see it's the exact same person who ran past him in the hallway. He died in front of his eyes. This is a damn good story. Now this gave me chills. Maybe it was his identical twin who scared him, initiating the cardiac arrest, so he could collect on his life insurance policy. He hid under the hospital bed until it was dark and then did the deed, knowing full well that if any nurses or staff saw him they might think he was his brother's ghost. Haha.